Welcome to another deal breakdown video where you get to look over my shoulder and watch me and my partners do real live real estate deals firsthand. And today's deal breakdown is a fully furnished beach house in Panama City, Florida that I wholesaled with my partner Chris Allen for a $35,000 wholesale profit. Now I'm really excited about this one because not only was it super tricky, on market luxury and a creative finance deal, but also had a no assignment clause making it even more complicated. Now that's a lot going on, but don't worry. One of the many gifts God gave me was the ability to simplify seemingly complex real estate strategies so that anyone can understand them. Now let's hope that I don't disappoint you with this one. God also blessed me with amazing business partners, and Chris Allen is no exception. He's truly a flipping genius. Now keep watching and you'll see what I mean. Let me summarize from a high level all of the tricky things going on here and then get into the details. So like I said, this deal was a beach house that the seller was using as a vacation rental, and for whatever reason, the owner wanted to sell it and he listed it for sale on market with a real estate agent. But then it sat for over 4 months without selling. Now after several price reductions, we offered the seller over his asking price with creative finance terms. Now just think about that. On market, not selling, we offer over asking price and still wholesaled it for a $35,000 profit. That's the power of wholesaling creative finance deals. Now I've said it before and I'll say it again. You can wholesale creative deals for a premium, which is why I created this video series. To master the strategy of wholesaling creative, be sure to follow my wholesaling creative playlist. I'll put the link in the description below. Now on this deal, Chris negotiated to buy the house subject to the existing loan, combined with seller finance on a second position loan. Now, as if that wasn't enough tricky for one deal, the contract with the seller had a no assignment clause preventing us from doing a traditional assignment of contract to a cash buyer. Now, the workaround was to use my LLC hack strategy. Here's how it works. We set up a designated LLC as the buyer on the contract. Then instead of assigning the contract, which you're not allowed to do, we sold the membership rights to the LLC, allowing us to still do a single closing. Now I have a video that explains exactly how to do my LLC hack strategy, including all of the paperwork for free. I'll put the link to that video in the description below for you. And like I said, all said and done, the deal resulted in a $35,000 wholesale profit. Now I told you this was next level stuff, so now let's slow down and start from the top and I'll explain the details. The first layer of tricky was that this deal was on market. That means the seller hired a real estate agent to list the property for sale. By doing so, the seller agreed to pay 3% to the listing agent and 3% to the buyer's agent for a total of 6%. Now it's important to realize that the seller pays the commissions. A lot of wholesalers don't know that you can find and wholesale on market properties, but you can. And one of the challenges is that you don't work directly with the seller with on market. All negotiations and interactions happen with the agent. The agent is the gatekeeper between you and the seller, so it's critical to learn how to effectively work with agents. One of the techniques that I teach to create a competitive advantage is to go directly to that listing agent and avoid using a buyer's agent. Now, I call this the double dip technique because you let that listing agent have both sides of the commission, which motivates them to help you win the deal. In this case, the agent acted as a transaction broker, which means they didn't represent the seller or the buyer, but still got the full commission. By the way, I created scripts for how to do the double dip technique with agents and how to overcome objections, and I'll give them to you for free. Just go to agentofferscripts.com to get the free download. Now, like I mentioned, this property was overpriced and sitting on the market, not selling, and the seller was not interested in a low cash offer. So he wasn't very motivated, and this is where most wholesalers completely miss an opportunity, but not Chris Allen. He offered over asking price if the seller would entertain creative financing, and that's the first big obstacle. Explaining creative to an agent well enough that the agent can then explain it to the seller. Most agents and sellers don't understand creative, so as a wholesaler, it's your job to explain it clearly. If you don't, they won't do it. Remember, a confused mind always says no. Fortunately, Chris is a creative financing genius, and the seller accepted his offer. By the way, be sure to get my free creative finance guide with everything you need to know to offer creative terms to agents and sellers. Just go to creativefinancinghacks.com to get the free download. Now let's talk about the creative structure and the underwriting process and what made this a good deal. We did a hybrid of subject to and seller financing. Let's cover subject to first. Subject to is where there is an existing loan on the property, and rather than bringing cash or alternative financing to pay off the existing debt, instead the seller permits you to leave it in place and just take over the payments. In this case, the existing loan balance was $509,871. And just to be clear, the subject to strategy is not to assume the loan, but rather take over the loan. That means the buyer goes on title as the new owner while the loan stays in the seller's name, which is why it's called buying the property subject to the existing loan. Now this is brilliant because, like my friend Pace Morby likes to say, why pay off existing debt with new debt, especially if the existing debt is better than new debt, which is the case with this deal. As of this recording, interest rates to obtain traditional financing are at 8%, and the rate on the existing loan is only 3.09%. And like I said a minute ago, the hardest part about subject to is explaining it to a seller or an agent. So to help you, I've got a subject to FAQ that you can give to sellers and give to agents, and I'll give that to you for free. I'll put the download link in the description below for you. So with this deal, Chris explained that we could pay $25,000 over their asking price if they would agree to our creative terms. And remember, it had been listed for over 90 days and wasn't selling. Now, in most cases, subject to is beneficial to a seller when there's little to no equity because the seller doesn't have any options, at least any good options. He can't lower the price because he's upside down on his loan. But sometimes there is an existing loan and a lot of equity. That was the case with this deal. The price we offered that the seller accepted was $715,000. That means after taking over the existing loan of $510,000, there was a balance owed to the seller of $205,000. But rather than pay the entire difference of $2,000 and $5,000 in cash, the seller agreed to carry or finance $130,000 at 5% for 30 years with a 7-year balloon. That left a remaining balance of $75,000 to be paid in cash at closing as a down payment, or what is often referred to as skin in the game. So to recap, there's the first position sub 2 loan of $510,000, a second position seller finance loan of $130,000, and then a $75,000 cash down payment for a total of $715,000 as the purchase price. So on top of the $75,000 down payment, the cash buyer also paid a $35,000 wholesale fee to us and about $9,000 in total closing fees for a total cash outlay or entry fee of approximately $119,000. Why is that significant? It's significant because the buyer was able to purchase this luxury beach house at a very low interest rate without qualifying for any bank financing for only 15% of the total acquisition in cash down. Now with current rates at 8% and banks requiring 25 to 30% down, that makes this deal very attractive to a buy and hold investor. But low interest rates and a low entry fee aren't the only things that made this deal amazing. With creative financing, there are several additional benefits to consider, such as cash flow, cash on cash return, and perhaps most important, tax benefits. First, let's talk about cash flow. Since this is a vacation rental, after taking the average daily rate and average occupancy and then subtracting operating expenses and debt service, this property earns a monthly net cash flow of approximately $2,000. And with only $119,000 in cash outlay, this property earns a 19% annual cash on cash return, which is outstanding. But perhaps the real kicker on this deal is the tax benefit. If you didn't know, the IRS tax code allows you to depreciate the value of the building over 27 and a half years as a non-cash tax deduction. So on this property, let's say after subtracting the land value, the building has a basis of $625,000. That means every year for the next 27 and a half years, the investor can write off approximately $23,000. And if you accelerate that and take 7 years up front in year one, you would reduce your tax liability right away by $160,000. Never forget, the number one reason why the rich buy assets is for the tax benefits. So when you wholesale creative, make sure to highlight those benefits. By the way, to help you underwrite creative deals to wholesale, be sure to get my creative calculator. You literally input the info and it runs all the numbers for you. Best of all, I'll give it to you for free. Just go to creativefinancingcalculator.com. So once we agreed on terms, the agent wrote the offer using their state-approved contract and included a no assignment clause, which was a big problem because we wanted to wholesale this house and it would be way too complicated and difficult to try and double close. Luckily, I found a workaround to a no assignment clause years ago when I wholesaled bank-owned properties. The workaround to a no assignment clause is to create a new LLC that goes on the contract as the buyer, and then rather than changing the buyer, which isn't allowed, instead you sell the LLC to the cash buyer and change the owner or member of the LLC from you to the cash buyer. Think about it. The LLC is still the buyer on the contract, thus not violating the no assignment clause, but the member of the LLC changes from you to your cash buyer. Now, if I lost you there, don't worry. I did a video that breaks down step by step how to do the LLC strategy, and I even give you all of the paperwork you need for free. I'll put the link to that video in the description below for you. So technically, we didn't wholesale this deal for $35,000. We actually sold the LLC for $35,000. Now, if you think that's brilliant, leave a comment and say, Jerry, you're a flipping genius. And one final thing I want to point out, a hybrid subject to seller finance deal is logistically pretty tricky, which is why we use a specialized transaction coordinator or TC. And what we typically do is we get the cash buyer to pay the TC fee. Now, don't let the ins and outs of creative trip you up. Learn how to structure deals and let a good TC get you to the finish line. By the way, I'll put a recommendation in the description below for a good TC that you can use on your next deal. Now, finally, I believe wholesaling creative is the hottest strategy right now, so be sure to watch this next video where I break down the 10 steps to wholesale creative. Watch that now, and I'll see you on the next video.